Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome all my friends back into Born on the Bayou Sports. Tim Costello, Scott Barzilla coming to you here on a Tuesday night recording tonight. Probably still put it out on our normal Wednesday. Scott, how are we doing today?
We're doing great, but not doing as great as the hometown 5, your Houston Rockets. Just a sports-related question, though. We're going to get into the trade deadline, I'm sure, here in a minute, but just to test your acumen as a would-be general manager, Tim, the Rockets are not interested in a De'Aaron Fox deal. It's been reported today, but the Spurs are one of his destinations. So are you the kind of GM that you just let them have him, or do you want to get into the fray just long enough to raise the price, just to make it hurt for them?
Yeah, not a bad thought process. I like the meddlesome nature. However, what if you make a bullshit offer and they accept it?
Yeah, well, it would have to be an offer that it had to be advantageous to you, though. I mean, it would be like,
you could Scott Boras yourself, right? Like you could keep saying you're the mystery team until like you accidentally become the mystery team.
Yeah, but like in baseball parlance, I would be like, all right, so we're just going to offer you Mauricio Dubon for Mike Trout. Okay, you can have him.
I mean, that'd be a nice move.
I'm just saying, like in the basketball terms, it would just be like,
no, but I mean, if Dana could pull that off, I think he'd be my favorite GM of all time.
Well, that would be like, but the basketball equivalent would have to be like, we'll just give you Jack Londale for De'Aaron Fox, straight up. What do you think? Sold. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty fantastic. Like, and I won't release these pictures I have of you. What
exactly.
pictures? Do you want me to? The only way you'll know what I have is when they're out there. Like, either you call my bluff, and I don't have pictures of you, but I do totally have these pictures. Or you trade me Mike Trout for Mauricio Dubon. Your call, absolutely in your court.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, of course, we'll get to the Astros later on in the show, but your Houston Rockets, as we speak, we are 94-80 up on the Hawks in the 4th quarter. I'm gonna be honest with you, Tim. I thought that they were gonna not be competitive in this game. I mean, they've come off of back-to-back victories against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They just beat Boston on more or less a last-second shot. I thought they were going to come in here and lay an egg. And the fact that they're up 14 in the 4th quarter, this team is showing us something.
Yeah, I named this segment, Can I Get an Amen, right? Because there has been something different in this team since he was inserted into the starting lineup because of Jabari's injury, right? Like this team has reached a new level with this, you call it our version of the lineup of death, right? Where you actually have some perimeter shooting with Dylan Brooks on the floor, with Jalen Green on the floor, with Fred VanVleet on the floor when he's actually knocking things down. And Sengun can shoot too, realistically, right? So you could stretch it a little bit and you could let Amen do Amen, because at the end of the game, he was the one with the ball in his hands against the Celtics, and he made the right decision. He made the right play. He got into the paint. He made a move. He shook one of the best defenders of the NBA in Brown, and he knocked down a floater. Like, what more can you want from the guy right now?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to talk too much about him, given what we have going on later on in the episode. But so, two separate questions. This kind of dovetails into a longer conversation. Number one, what happens with Jabari Smith when he comes back? And then number two, has our calculus, because we both, I think, were thinking this is not a this year team. Has your calculus on this team changed?
It really hasn't, Scott. I think, I'm even more wanting to let this year play out, and see what our real weaknesses are in the playoffs, right? Because I think you and I both would agree that the regular season is a completely different animal than the NBA playoffs, right? When the best teams in the league get to play you at minimum, 5 straight nights in a row or 4 straight nights in a row, um, they can figure stuff out. They'll exploit weaknesses. And I'd like to see what teams do against the Rockets. I'd like to see what the Rockets do in those situations as well before I try and blow this roster up midseason. That's kind of what they said today. But I think I've been on record for a couple months now that that's really what I'd like to see them do. And I didn't see Amen taking this step this season this way, right? I saw him improving. I didn't see him, literally, transitioning into the guy on this roster right now. And so I don't want to change anything. I want to see what we have. I want to see what Jalen Green looks like in the playoffs. I want to see what Sengun looks like in the playoffs. And then I want to go into this offseason free of Fred VanVleet's contract, theoretically, and be able to decide, what do I want to do right now?
I'm thinking a little bit differently, but more along the same lines. When I'm looking at, I think you can make a deal for the right star. I just don't think the right star is out there right now. But I'm theoretically thinking, hey, if the right star comes along, yeah, make a deal. But they've already said they're not interested in Fox. I mean, does Devin Booker interest you?
Not at this point in his career.
And
Not
and I don't think Jimmy Butler is interested. Is interesting anybody at this point, given what he's done over the last month, which hadn't been much on the floor because he hasn't been on the floor because he's been a malcontent. So I don't think that star's out there right now. Does that change in the summer? Maybe. Anything's possible in the summer. Maybe after the season, somebody gets disgruntled, wants to change teams in the summer. But yeah, right now, I think you ride this thing out. Now, the other question I asked, though, is what do you do with Jabari Smith when he gets back?
I mean, I think he's still a good rotational piece, but right now you can't change the starting five. So, I think you can run Tari Eason and Jabari together in some situations as a solution off the bench. I think you can run Steven Adams and Jabari Smith together on the court in some situations off the bench, and I think that gives you some good elite rim protection, realistically, the way Adams is playing, and still some really good defense from Jabari Smith. He's long. He can still shoot it. So I think maybe moving him to the bench might be, for this Rockets team, the better fit. I don't know for his career how he's going to feel about that. And then that's when you get to the summer, right? Where maybe you've got a guy in Jabari Smith who's disgruntled. Somebody's interested. We can package something around Jabari Smith, expiring Dylan Brooks contract, and bring in a true legit stretch four, right? Instead of playing Dylan Brooks at the four. Maybe that's the option that you go. I don't know, but you've got money coming off the books with Fred VanVleet, right? That was a 2 with a team option for the 3rd year. So if that comes off and you have a really good showing and maybe win one round of the playoffs and have a tough fought second round, and you're like, okay, we're this type of player away. Let's go get that type of player with either the money that we have or the assets that we have, right? But that's what I loved about Daryl Morey was he wasn't willing to throw it all in on just anybody, right? He always kept us flexible. Did he make some weird moves and pick up a Samuel Dallenberg? And you're like, what the fuck are we doing here? But you know what? He traded him out halfway through the year when he realized the guy was garbage. Hey, did he have some great finds in Omer Sheik? Yeah, like absolutely. But what he did was keep himself flexible so that way when a guy like James Harden became available, he had the assets you needed to go ahead and get James Harden because they don't come along every now and then. So when that guy is there, you know, the Rockets have a lot of young talent. They have a selection of picks to work from in the future. You're flexible enough. You can go get that guy if that situation happens this summer. If not, you've got cap space for what's Fred VanVleet making? Like $30 million? You got $30 million to go spend.
Well, you're probably over the cap now, so I don't know how much you have left under once he leaves. But, you know, I think the Brooks and Jabari Smith, you know, combination, maybe throwing in another guy. But here's a question, though. You let Fred VanVleet go. Do you feel comfortable with a Reed Shepherd Holiday point guard combination moving forward?
You know, most likely no, but you've got potentially a draft pick, or you've got cap space, or you've got you know, a trade to be made. I like what Fred's brought to this team. And if Fred's willing to come back at a lower number, I'm interested in Fred's services. But at the end of the day, you see who the future of this basketball team is, right? And it's not Fred VanVleet. So you're not going to be one of the main ball handlers going forward. I want the ball in Amen Thompson's hands. I want the ball in Jalen Green's hands and kind of let them create and find either a path to the basket or an open shooter on the outside. So I'm looking for you to become more of a spot up 3-point shooter, Fred, and a good defender. If that's something that you're willing to be a part of at $15 million a year for a couple of years, come on back. If not, we need to find somebody who is willing to be basically what Derek Fisher was, right? Like Derek Fisher would D up, and if you hit him on an open pass, he'd knock down the shot. Like he was a point guard, but how often did he really bring the ball up the court?
Yeah, I think Amen has found his spot in the 3-hole, which I think was what we were worried about to begin with. When we were looking at this team, we were looking at, you know, Dylan Brooks is not a championship 3. He's a good defender. You know, had a great night against Boston, but he's not a consistent scorer. Amen's a little bit more dynamic because he brings both the offense and the defense. I do like moving forward, you know, maybe getting a more dynamic 4 in here somehow. So that point guard, you know, there are guys around the league you could kind of pick up for close to league minimum who could probably give you 15 to 20 good minutes at the point.
Yeah, again, like you're not running the offense, right? You are not bringing the ball up the court, calling ISO 2 and starting the motion, right? Like that's not what we're doing. So we need somebody who can come in, play good defense, and hit an open jump shot. That's all that we need you to do, right? I don't know who that guy is right now. And if it is Fred at a reduced number, that's fine. But Fred was brought in to set a standard, right? Fred is a guy who has a ring from his time in Toronto. He's a guy who's been in professional organizations, played with superstars, seen how they conduct themselves. And I would say at the end of the day, Fred did that, right? Like Fred brought a level of professionalism to Jalen Green that he vastly needed. Fred has been there for all of Amen's career. And I'm not going to say he's the reason he's flourished, but at the end of the day, he's his teammate and he's helped him get to where he is. So I wouldn't say we, you know, overpaid for Fred, but I would say that I'm not willing to pay that price next year based on what this team is. And so again, I see the makeup of this team shifting more towards almost like this team needs to be built like the Heat were, right? Like when the Heat had the big 3 of LeBron and D Wade as your 2 wings, I'm not saying you're going to go get guys that are at the end of their career or whatever, but like the game plan of those teams was you had 2 guys who could live in the paint, right? Those guys lived in the paint, and you had Mario Chalmers out there. You had Mike, the 3-point shooter, not Mike Williams, but whatever. Mike Bibby. Mike Bibby played some point guard for them at some points, right? Like you had just guys. You had just guys because your stars were your wings.
I was going to say, if you end up dealing Brooks and letting Van Vliet go, I think it's a popular opinion to say you overpaid for them. But I would say they gave you exactly what you needed.
Agreed.
Exactly the right time. I think, and you could claim right now, based on the development of the younger guys on this team, which we can't sleep on Cam Whitmore, we can't sleep on Deshaun Tate, we can't Deshaun Tate tonight 16 points.
He ain't young anymore though. He had 16 tonight.
16 tonight, yeah.
Aaron back to back. He's getting a little extra run.
Yeah, Aaron Holiday with 8. So you have some guys on that bench that can play, and so you can let those 2 guys go, and you can turn it over to these younger guys who have now learned how to play winning basketball.
And I think I said what I said about Fred, his professionalism and what he brought. I'll say, similar for Brooks, but also like Brooks brought that nasty, right? Like this was a young group of kids that just want to get out and ball and then go party at the end of the night, right? They didn't care. They only got pissed if you embarrassed them. There was no fucking nasty on this team. They rolled over and they died night in and night out. You needed that guy to get up in people's faces and say, you're not coming in my house. You're not doing this in my home gym. It's not happening, right? Like we had nobody on the team at all before you bring in Dillon Brooks to show these guys what that looked like, right? There's a difference even between what Fred brought, which was how to prepare and how to train and how to literally run a set team instead of just AAU up and down bullshit. And then what Dillon Brooks brings is I'm going to whoop some fucking ass tonight if you get up my face.
And I think the other part of this equation, and you mentioned in the playoffs, what's going to happen when you get into a series. I feel like with Udoka, we've got one of the better coaches. I think we got a guy that can game plan his way through a series. I mean, he showed he could do that in Boston. He obviously didn't get the opportunity to do that last year because, the West was just so stacked. But he's a guy that I think if you sit there and said, okay, you're in a 5-game series, 7-game series, I want you to game plan your way through this. He's a coach that can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely is. And I think guys like Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks are going to show why they command the money that they do if they get the chance to play in the playoffs, right? They didn't get to show that last year. This team took a big step forward, and I think you and I have mentioned before that, if we were in the East, we would have been a 5 or 6 seed. So, it's just the fact that, as you said, the West was stacked. It's, but if it's in butts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. It's not what it is. But this year, it looks, at least as of now, he's going to have that opportunity. And Dillon Brooks is a guy that every playoff team hates playing against that guy. Just bring your sack lunch, and it's going to be a tough day. Num, right? Okay. I'm going to be in your shit for 48 straight minutes. Good luck scoring on me. It's going to be a long 5, 6, 7 games, however long we play. You're going to hate every minute of it, and then we're going to shake hands and go our way at the end. But, I'll be damned if I guarantee you that guy doesn't bring it on a night in and night out basis in the playoffs. He's going to be a handle. He's going to be a tough handle for other teams defensively. He's going to bring it at that level. Fred is going to be, hopefully a different level player when he's in that playoff environment and take it to that next level.
Okay, so before we shift gears off of basketball, I had a little game because I think we will be on the air next time after the trade deadline, because trade deadline is February 5th, if I'm correct. So, number one question, do the Rockets make a move or not?
If they do, it's going to be something on the periphery. So I'm going to say yeah. I think they add a minor piece.
Okay, I can go along with that. All right, now, the other, big question is stars on the move, just period. Not Rockets, on just period. Does Jimmy Butler get dealt?
No.
Well, the Heat has suspended him indefinitely, so that'll be an interesting. That would be an interesting. Are they going to unsuspend him after February 5th? That would be kind of an interesting little
I
tidbit.
just don't see anyone giving up much to get him. And I don't know what the Heat are going to be comfortable taking at this point, right? Like, are you fine? Just take a second-round pick and take him? Then why hasn't that happened already?
All right. Do the Kings deal Fox?
Yes.
Who do
They're playing better since they made the move at coach. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no.
Okay.
They try and fight for the playoffs.
Okay, so and then do the Suns break up their top three?
Maybe Beal.
Yeah, Beal. He already turned down a deal to the Bulls. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't, but I mean, maybe he just wants a legitimate championship contender. I'd love to have a guy like Beal as in the future, if you look at replacing your point guard spot, right? Like your off guard in that case is Beal as just a 3-point shooter. I'd be okay with that, but he's not going to want that. Like he's a guy who thinks he should be getting 25, 30 shots a game.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm not thinking any of those guys for the Rockets, mind you. I'm just thinking, whether or not they go anywhere. And so
we need this team's Mario Chalmers. That's what we need. Maybe it's from the Houston Rockets though, because Mario Chalmers, I think, was a local guy. No, he was a Kansas guy. Never mind, forget it.
Good. So any stars that I'm leaving out that you think you would not be surprised to see moved?
I don't think there's going to be the big splash at the deadline this year. I really don't. Like, there's not that guy out there. I feel like other than Butler, Harden was, I guess, being the malcontent in Philadelphia, but I don't know. And he got moved to LA, but I don't know, Scott. I don't see it. Do you?
No, I don't. The funny thing I heard mentioned was, those Spider-Man memes where you have the two Spider-Men pointing at each other?
Yeah.
One of them said, okay, one of the Spider-Men is Aaron Rodgers and the other one's Jimmy Butler. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, both, kind of outspoken guys who, are never happy anywhere they are. And I love the fact that, the story comes out today that Aaron Rodgers will be willing to play for Aaron Glenn, and Aaron Glenn will be willing to have Aaron Rodgers play for him. It's like, why are we even asking?
Well, that's good. He's your quarterback on your roster as of now. Like, cool.
Well, the point is that, okay, so Aaron Rodgers leaves the Jets. What's the Jets' record?
Go to the Vikings. He's going to go to the Vikings, man. He's going to relive Brett Favre's life.
But I'm saying, what are the Jets' record without Aaron Rodgers?
Doesn't matter. What was the fucking record with them?
That's my whole point. That's the whole point, Tim. I think they were 5-12. So, I mean, are they 4-13 without him? 3-14?
Yeah, it's a joke, man. It's a fucking disaster. I feel bad for Jets fans everywhere. But speaking of people I don't feel bad for, Bobby Slowik, get the fuck out of town. You're out of here, baby.
He's no longer a scumbag.
He's an unemployed scumbag now, Scott. And here's why he's still a scumbag. I watched a YouTube video today, right? And it was like 7 straight minutes of questionable Bobby Slowik play calls.
Oh, you should. Yeah, you sent that to me.
I said, did you watch it at all?
I did.
And when you get it, like during the game, you're just like, wow, that was a weird one, right? Wow, okay. But then when you get it broken down like that, I was mad. I was like legitimately fucking mad. The one that really set me off was the one where we motioned CJ Stroud out to the far sideline and run a fade route with Joe Mixon, throw it to the corner of the end zone. Like, what the fuck? Like, you just realize how much we wasted this year. And then the story starts coming out that he and CJ Stroud got into it over, what CJ Stroud was calling certain plays because of how they did it at Ohio State. Like, if this was the case that these guys were contentious for 2 years, I couldn't be happier. I'm already happy. Couldn't be happier that he is gone.
I'm not going to buy into too much of that. I mean, maybe that happens. And maybe, Stroud, I tend to, the report I read was the same one, but then said after he was drafted, things were okay. But the thing is, you can't look at what happened on the field and think things were okay. What got me mad was when I was watching the segment of, they broke down the 7 minutes into different parts.
Yeah.
And they broke it down that the protection. because every one of those plays I kept going, I'm just going to count in my head and see if CJ held on to the ball too long. Every time I got to 1,000, 2,000, 3, 1,000 sack, 3 seconds was what he was given. Like there was only one play I was able to get up to 4 seconds. So did he take a few sacks that he probably shouldn't have? Maybe. But the ones that really got me mad was when he had Dalton Schultz blocking the defensive end. And that was a whole section of the video was here. Watch Bobby Slowik try and have a tight end block a defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like,
week in and week fucking out.
And
no
doing
adjustments.
And doing it in the divisional playoff game after 18 games of seeing it not work. Now I don't know where you're going to go direction. What people seem to be thinking around here is that it's Chip Kelly, and that basically it's Chip Kelly or bust. Like they interviewed today. I don't know if you saw that they interviewed Thad Lewis.
I saw that. They also interviewed the Rams passing game coordinator as well.
They interviewed LaFleur was one of them. Mike LaFleur, not the coach of the Green Bay Packers. So everybody settled down for a second. We're not getting that guy. They interviewed the guy from Syracuse that had number 1 passing offense in college football. But I don't know if it were Chip Kelly. What are your thoughts?
I'm intrigued. As Chip Kelly as a play caller only, solely because like I've read a lot of stories here lately how like he's kind of found joy in just like only worrying about the offense, right? Like he felt like he was just, it was taking up too much of his life to be a coach, and it was taking the joy out of his life, and he just loves calling plays, and that's not what he does, right? And if that's the case, I'm intrigued. If I get power hungry, trade away best players mindset Chip Kelly, I don't love it, right? But D'Amico played for Chip Kelly in Philadelphia, right? So like D'Amico knows Chip Kelly. So if they're cool, I'm intrigued because like clearly D'Amico's willing to fire a guy who's not a good fit, and he knows what the fit needs to be, right? But like my first question I'm asking him is like, how are you protecting my quarterback, right? Like that's got to be question number 1 is Chip. Thanks for coming down. Great to see you. Tell me what you do to protect CJ Stroud.
Well, you look at his numbers as head coach of the Eagles. They were 4th in the NFL on offense, 3rd in the NFL on offense, and then 13th in the NFL on offense in the year that he was fired. And then he goes to San Francisco and lays an egg. I think he was like 25th in offense that season as head coach of the 49ers. Of course, that was not an extremely talented 49ers team. They went 2-14. But this year, the thing is that what intrigues me about him is that he went to play. Ryan Day was a former player of his. So he's already gone to play, coach for a former player. So he would be doing that again, which he showed that he's willing to do that. He's not only willing to be an assistant, but he's willing to be an assistant for somebody who he used to coach. So he's got the ego to where he's allowed to do that. The other thing that intrigues me about him is that they've always been very creative and very good at running the football everywhere he's been, no matter where he's been. The passing game, maybe in the NFL, wasn't quite that much. But then again, NFL teams are running more college-like offenses than they used to.
See, I think with him, he put up good numbers, but then I think, especially in the NFL, he, like many other coaches, thought like, I can scheme for almost any quarterback, right? Like he put up numbers with Mark Sanchez. Like, okay. Then he bets the fucking house on Sam Bradford, and brought him up to Philadelphia. I would have actually liked to see what that would have looked like because Sam Bradford ran a similar offense in Oklahoma. It's just Bradford never stayed healthy. But like he kind of traded away guys that were really, really good NFL players, whether because they were bad fits or whatever. But he kind of felt like my scheme is so good, I don't need these guys, right? I don't need the big star guys. I can go get a Sam Bradford because he knows my scheme. I don't need the quarterback that, got us to where we were for so long. I don't need Michael Vick. I don't need whoever. I'm Chip Kelly. Sam Bradford knows my offense. I'm going to bet the house on Sam Bradford. I don't need, McCoy. I'm going to bet the house on DeMarco Murray because he ran my offense with Sam Bradford in college, right? Like that was the mindset of his. But if he's just calling the plays, and if we can slow it down a little bit too, right? Like I think that's what hurt him in the NFL as well is he always tried to go too fast and he gassed his defense because they were just like right back on the field so quickly. So if you can maybe pick up the pace a bit, but I don't want to fucking go no huddle the whole time, I'd be intrigued. And again, you're right. The way they ran the football has been spectacular everywhere he's gone. So I would be interested in Chip Kelly, but I'm interested in whoever's the best fit for the roster that we have, right? Because we're kind of set at some positions. We can't make a ton of moves on the offensive line. We don't have a ton of cap space. So like I'm looking at someone who can come in and say like, look, if you would have done X, Y, and Z better, you could have had better protection. And here's why. Here's what I would have done. And if that's Chip Kelly, I'm in. If it's the Rams passing game coordinator, I'm in. If it's Gerard Johnson and he's sitting there going, man, I was so pissed. Thank God he's gone. Here's what I would have done. Okay, cool. Like whatever, right? Just I need to see something completely different. Like literally, we did not do justice to what CJ Stroud is as a quarterback, right? Like I don't think we put him in positions to succeed at all this year. He is not look what he did in college, and then look at the offense we forced him into in the last 2 years, and tell me how we found ways to utilize this guy's skills as good as possible.
This is where I'm actually, there are two historical precedents that I think I see for this. But I think my big question is with him or any OC is how much power do you give this guy? Because obviously he's calling plays. I mean, that's a given. But what happens if he comes in and looks at it and goes like, this Laramie Tunsil guy, I can't handle this guy. You're going to have to get rid of this guy. I mean, are we actually going to do that? Knowing, what's going to happen, with the cap. Obviously, you're not going to cut Laramie Tunsil. You would trade him. And I think I shared with you what the numbers would be. I think you would save about $13-14 million on the cap if you trade him before the draft, and about $20 million if you trade him after June 1st. But if somebody like Chip Kelly or, Rams passing game coordinator or whoever comes in and says, this guy's setting a bad example for our group, you're going to have to get rid of him in order for us to move forward. Are you going to let him make that call? The two historical examples I'm thinking of, one of them I know you were alive and well for. One of them you were alive technically, but you don't remember. The one you were alive and know well is when we hired Wade Phillips. Is when they go to Gary Kubiak and said, you can't survive with this bad of a defense. We're going to have to hire an established DC for you in order for us to move forward, and it worked. The other one is after we blew the bit in Buffalo back in 1993, they went to Jack Pardee and said, you're hiring a real DC, and they hired Buddy Ryan, and you better believe that shit worked, at least until we got to the playoffs. That's where I see this at. I see this at you're a team, you're right there. We just need an actual adult in the room to run this offense. Let's go get that guy.
I have less fear of that now going forward, right? Like I honestly feel maybe a little bit that's how this team ran the first 2 years. Like I don't think it's crazy to think maybe the Texans team kind of ran like they remember the Titans team where like D'Amico Ryan's running the offense, or but the opposite, right? Where he's like, you worry about your defense, coach, I'll worry about my offense, right? Like I feel like that's kind of how it ran in the building, maybe. Like D'Amico's defense ran fine. Bobby Slowik's fucking offense was a joke. It was awful, right? So I think part of it is going to be he's going to have to be a more involved head coach, right? Like Mike Tomlin's a great example. Mike Tomlin's a defensive-minded guy, right? Like, but at the end of the day, Mike Tomlin is the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mike Tomlin has lasted because he understands more than just the defensive side of the ball, and he can put good guys in an offensive coordinator position. He can have good guys at defensive coordinator who can call plays for him if we game plan throughout the week and know what everybody needs, right? So maybe DeMeco might have to take a step back from calling plays and let Matt Burke do that this year. I don't know. I don't want to see a step back in quality. However, I do think maybe these 2 years were a bit of a learning experience for DeMeco and realizing I have to have my hands involved more everywhere. If my offensive coordinator comes to me and says, Laramie Tunsil is setting a bad example for this team, I'm willing to have that conversation. But I'm also going to say, hey, coach, maybe we find a way to hold him more accountable in front of everybody first. If that doesn't work, then yeah, let's move on from it. But if we can't try and change how we're coaching him first, I'm not willing to have that conversation because this is a member of my roster and we've built our offense around having this guy protect our quarterback. And quite frankly, he's the fucking only one who does.
Well, and I think DeMeco's at a point in his coaching career because let's game this out. We've already gone through 2 years. Let's say he hires another OC that sucks. And in 2 years, we're ready to fire an OC. At that point, DeMeco's 4 years in. DeMeco might be shown the door if things, are not vastly improving and this team takes a step back in general. But you do the flip side because this guy called in, he's one of those callers, you shouldn't hire Chip Kelly because they're going to want to replace DeMeco Ryans with Chip Kelly. And it's like, no, if Chip Kelly comes in and this offense takes a step forward, you're going to the AFC title game. If you're going to the AFC title game, there's no way in hell you're firing DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans is going to be your coach for the next decade if that happens. And that's where DeMeco Ryans, I think, has to look at this when he's making this hire is he can't be, are they going to no, you hire the best dude. And if you get the best dude, this team takes another step. You got job security for as long as you want it.
And quite frankly, I think DeMeco's already on a bit of a longer leash just because of what he's done in these first 2 years, right? Like, even with bad offensive coordinator work, you've won the division twice. You've had this year one of the best defenses you and I have ever seen this team have, right? That includes the Wade Phillips years where, those defenses were really fucking good. DeMeco's were better, right? I think you could take the best Wade Phillips defense he ever had and this year's DeMeco Ryans defense, and this one wipes the floor with it, Scott. The cornerback play, we never ever, no matter when the Texans were in existence, we've never had defensive back play like we have right now. So, the defense is going to continue, I think, at a certain level, especially when you've got the young guys that we have. You go get the best guy. If Chip Kelly has success and if the Texans make it to the AFC Championship game and he gets head coaching interviews, it's not going to be with the Texans, right? It's going to be with someone else. And if Chip Kelly's come out and said, I don't want to be a head coach anymore, I just like calling plays, and he's the best guy at calling plays, why wouldn't you want him? Because then, for CJ, that might be the best case scenario, right? You don't have to worry about your coordinator being taken away to be a head coach somewhere else because he said, I don't want to do this. I have money. I'm already rich. I'm happy doing this. If it works, that's a best case scenario for CJ Stroud where you can form a partnership. He speaks the same language because they were both at Ohio State under Ryan Day. So we can literally talk, formations and things like that where they're already speaking like to like. So I want CJ in on these meetings, though. Is that crazy, Scott, to think he should be in on these meetings?
I'll say the key number is number 3 here. Number 1, I'm going to ask these guys 3 questions. But the key, because this is CJ Stroud's 3rd year. This is the year that after which teams make decisions about whether or not they're going to give their quarterback that mega deal. And are you going to give CJ Stroud $60 million? Based on this year, the answer is no. But who are you going to – so my first question would be, how do we unlock CJ Stroud? That's my first question to any coordinator. Question number 2 is the one you asked right off the bat was, how do you protect CJ Stroud? And question number 3, and this is the one I think Hannah McNair ought to come in and ask. So tell me about wide receiver screens.
Ohio State ran a lot of those, though.
But tell me why did they work for you and not the way we did them?
I mean, I don't mind a wide receiver screen if it's run well and not 12 times in one game every time we're in 3rd and long, right? Like for Gary Kubiak, it was the halfback draw or the 5-yard out on a 3rd and 12. With
the naked bootleg to Owen Daniels
for 5 yards on a 3rd and 12. that was a fucking classic Cougs move. But yeah. Would you let CJ Stroud in these meetings though? Like if you have a first meeting with Chip Kelly and it's a good meeting, right? And you're gonna now say like, hey, you've moved on to the next round. Do you say, hey, CJ, do you want to meet with Chip and do you want to talk and see what that relationship would be like? Or do you kind of say he's the player, I'm the coach, I'm not, comfortable giving him that kind of control? Or, do you want his say?
No, this is what I do. I include him in the first meeting, and I'll tell you why. Think one of the reasons why you interview these guys is not only to decide whether or not you're going to hire them, you use inside information. And so think about how many times and how many different coordinators he can talk to. They can sit there and say, how would you take my game to the next level? And all those guys are going to tell him, honestly, hopefully, this is what's wrong with your game right now. And, and you might get different answers. And so, one of those things might be something that unlocks, that turns a light bulb on for CJ going like, yeah, you're right. I do need to change how I do that. And so you could get, a lot of inside information, but obviously the whole thing, the only way this thing works is not only does the guy have to know what he's doing, but CJ has to buy in. And so he needs to listen to these guys, and he needs to not only sit there and say like, this is not, this is not a guy I can jive with. I can't vibe with this guy. Or this guy really knows his football and I like him and I can work with this guy. I mean, I think you want to hear that.
I agree with a lot of that, Scott, except I do have a fear if you take that route, it almost kind of turns into like the arbitration process for baseball, where you've now listened to a bunch of people tell you what you don't do well. And maybe that has a little bit of a negative effect. I don't know. Like it's one thought. I also don't want him meeting with 10 guys, right? Get it to the final 3 and let him tell me of those 3, like, not even who'd you like more, just like tell me what you thought about each one of these guys, right? Just like I want you to sit in a room and watch film together, just the 2 of you. And I want you to tell me like what you thought about each one of these film sessions and what did you think about breaking down film with Gerard Johnson? What did you think about breaking down film with Chip Kelly? What did you think about breaking down film with LaFleur? Not even who's your favorite, just what were your thoughts on each one of these guys' insights and take it from there, right? Because I do think at the end of the day, while you and I both agree Stroud is the future of this franchise, he's our guy, he's still going into year 3 and he had a down year 2. This isn't Tom Brady or Peyton Manning coming in and having conversations, right? This is a 3rd-year quarterback who has yet to get out of the 2nd round and has never won a road playoff game. So until you show me a little bit more, or even, maybe even sign a reduced rate 2nd contract because you love the city and want to help get some talent around you. If you do that, yeah, come on in, pick your fucking offensive coordinator. I don't care. But until that point, I think maybe it's a 2nd round conversation, not the first one.
I could buy that. But the other thing, Ross Tucker, I don't know if you've ever listened to him.
I haven't, no.
No, he's a former NFL offensive lineman. And he comes on the 610 in the morning sometimes. And he just said, I can't believe you don't have more former linemen or offensive line coaches as offensive coordinators. Because that's Andy Reid's background. Andy Reid was a offensive line coach for 10 years, before he moved up the ranks and became a head coach. Because you think about how many times you get these guys who want to play Madden and draw up these great plays, and they're asking linemen to do stuff they physically can't do. And to me,
But then to that thought process, Scott, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you set a light bulb off in my head. The Eagles have the best fucking offensive line in football. They develop offensive linemen at a level that no one else does, and their offensive line coach has been there for years. Would you want to interview that guy for an offensive coordinator position?
I would, just to hear what,
Yeah.
Again, you're getting intel, part of that.
Yeah.
And so you're asking him, hey, how did you build such great offensive lines? Because even if you don't hire that guy, that's information that you can use to build your line. But see, the other part of that is, think about this. If you give CJ Stroud 7 seconds to throw, is he going to find an open guy?
Yeah, I think you could find an open guy after
exactly.
7 seconds.
It doesn't matter what kind of plays I'm drawing up. It could draw it up with rocks in the dirt. I think if you give my quarterback 7 seconds, he'll find a guy.
I mean, at 7 seconds, it's backyard football anyway, right? Like, we've abandoned our regular routes and we're moving into just get open territory.
Okay,
right?
but if you're saying, but even if I give my guy 5 seconds, I mean, you
can now run double moves because it has time to develop.
Exactly. So I would interview that guy just to find out what he knows about offensive line play.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in that thought process, Scott. Like, the fact is, the Eagles obviously do a better job than anybody else in the league with offensive line talent, right? Like, Jason Kelce was a 4th-round pick. Everybody else on that the offensive line is like the shortest guy is 6'6", right? They are known for just mauling people. Like, your running back just ran for 2,000 yards. Yeah, I am 100% in line with getting that guy in the building. I just worry with the Super Bowl and everything looming, is there going to be time, right? Like, are you going to have time to get that guy here?
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, it's a good thought, and there's other good offensive line coaches around the league. So I mean, just to get somebody in,
like a Mike Munchak, man. Would you bring in a Munchak for an offensive coordinator interview? And then if you like what he says, but he's not quite OC material, do you say, are you interested in our O-line coach?
I would just to pick that guy's brain because he knows so much.
Yeah. Houston legend. Speaking of another Houston legend, though, is Alex Bregman back, Scott? Well, pump the brakes now. It's been a back and forth on Twitter. Now it comes out the talks were all internal. There's, apparently now my favorite tweet was that Scott Boras has been left on red by Dana Brown, that Boras has reached out, but Brown hasn't returned that message yet. That gives me a little bit of Schadenfreude on the inside. I don't know, Scott. Is Alex Bregman going to come back?
Oh, okay. So if you're the Astros, I'll ask it this way. Are you giving them 6/156?
I don't know, man. Now that we have like a top third base prospect, I don't know.
Well, Smith can play right field.
Okay. That helps. Then yeah, I'm willing to do it. If Smith comes up as a right fielder, worst case scenario, Bregman moves to second base as he gets older towards the end of that contract, and maybe Altuve's DHing for the last year of his career. Like, I don't know. I feel like this window stays open a lot longer, and this offseason looks a lot different if Bregman is back, and you basically just swapped out Paredes and Walker for Kyle Tucker. Like, I feel like this is a lot more competitive of a baseball team.
I feel like Dana Brown smells blood in the water. That's what I think. And I think what he knows is that his 6/156 was the most years and probably around the right AAV. But I don't know of anybody that offered him more than 5 years. I think Boston offered him 4. I think Detroit offered him 5. So if we got the highest offer on the board and you said no, I think Brown is going to try and sweat him and get him for less. That's my take on it.
I don't think you're wrong. I think he may even go back to him at like a 390 with an opt out after each year.
Maybe, and so here's the other part of this too, is that Jose Altuve has been seen. Video has been taken and released online of him taking fly balls and left. I think this might happen regardless of whether or not they get Bregman. Because the other guy they were talking to is Jorge Polanco, who is a career second baseman. Now, the difference is Polanco's not a good defensive second baseman.
He played third for the Mariners last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he played third for them, but he's not a good defensive second baseman. And so you'd be replacing a bad defensive second baseman with a bad defensive second baseman. Now, if you get Bregman, you're moving Paredes to second. I've looked at the numbers. He's played about 50 games there. He doesn't look like your typical second baseman. I mean, he's a little
like when Yuli was playing second base.
He's a little beefier than your typical second baseman, but the numbers show that he was close to neutral.
Fine, I think fine was the way to put it.
Yeah,
realistically.
Yeah. But I think if I'm going to release an article on Friday, which I usually do on crawfish boxes, I think you can make an argument that Altuve is more valuable in left field than he is at second base. Do you think he can be a neutral left fielder?
Yes. Especially playing 81 games at Minute Maid Park, right? Like if he starts every game or almost every game in left field at Minute Maid Park and 50% on the road, pick and choose your spots and DH him in the other spots, I'd say that's a more valuable fit for him because his defense has been declining at second base. And I love Jose Altuve. You will not find a bigger defender of Jose Altuve than Tim Costello. But realistically, his bat has aged better than his glove.
The last 3 years, he's been minus 13, minus 14, minus 15 defensive runs saved. Now, if you look at StatCast is a little better, but then again, StatCast, nobody is that bad in StatCast. Their numbers aren't, that severe. But
I think you could cover it up a little bit better with all the shifting the Astros were doing too.
Yeah,
now that the shift is banned, he has to cover a lot more ground.
That's right when those numbers started declining, is when the shift was banned. So, I think if he is a neutral left fielder, even with the runs, because the Baseball Reference does this. I don't know if you know, or you look at the Baseball Reference numbers. They have a number they call RPOS. So relative position and the number of runs that position's worth. Second base tends to be 4 to 5 runs a season. Left field tends to be minus 4 to 5 runs a season. So if he's neutral and left, not getting the minus 14 or 15 runs he was getting as a fielder at second, he's about a half win better in left field.
Yeah, I think it helps the team, right? Because realistically, we're scared about this outfield, right? Like not even defensively, right? Like I think defensively, if you ran out Dubon, Jake Myers, and Chas McCormick in your outfield, like I'm not at all worried about that defense.
Oh no, they're all plus defenders.
Yeah, I'm worried about the fact that your 7, 8, 9 looks like Dubon, Jake Myers, and Chas McCormick. Yeah. So if I get a legitimate major league bat in left field, and maybe Chaz can hit 250 this year, now I can swallow Jake Myers in center, or I can play Mauricio Dubon in center every day because I've got a collection of Altuve and Bregman and Paredes who can all, Altuve can play second and left. Bregman can play third and second. Paredes can play first and third. We can move this thing around. Alvarez can play some left field when Fromber's pitching, right? Like we could pencil in the bats that we have to fill those spots. And now that outfield bats don't look as, embarrassing.
Really, quite frankly, you're looking. So let's say we bring Bregman back. Your lineup, your top 3 is going to be Altuve, Bregman, and Jordan, right?
Probably.
So then you go probably Walker, Paredes, maybe. I don't know if you go Paredes, then Diaz, or Diaz, Paredes.
Okay. So
Neither
either
one.
Walker, Paredes, Diaz through 6.
Yeah. So your 7th guy becomes Jeremy Pena.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad 7th place hitter.
Mm-hmm.
Your 8th hitter becomes Chas McCormick. I can live with that.
Mm-hmm. And
Your
if
9th,
Dubon's your starting center fielder, he's a pretty nice little 9th hitter who can
or
slip it
Myers.
back to Altuve. I prefer Dubon at this point in
Yeah,
that lineup.
well, but either way, it really doesn't matter if they're
You're
their
right.
9th place hitter. So, and then if you get Polanco, I would say offensively, would you say that Polanco is even with Pena offensively? They're different kinds of hitters, but
Yeah, Polanco's more of a slapper, but yeah, I mean, that's
he
fair.
hit like 14, 15 home runs last year, strikes out a ton, but I think he walks a little bit more than Pena. So probably about 100 OPS plus kind of guy.
Yeah.
So you're still looking at a pretty damn good 7 deep lineup if your top 7 guys are all league average or better. And then, of course, McCormick, if he returns back to pre-2024 norms, is also average or above. So, I mean, that's a pretty damn good looking lineup. Now, we did have a guy leave town. I don't know if you saw the comments today about the guy that just left town.
I didn't see anything specifically. I'm sure it was complimentary.
Um,
Of Presley?
yeah, Dana Brown, he admitted that their relationship got pretty rocky once they got Hader.
Who
And
was
he,
their relationship? Like the teams and Presley's or Browns and Presley's?
Brown and Presley.
Okay.
And he basically said, well, it's bound to affect the relationship. He was professional. I was professional, but, it's going to have an effect, is basically what he said.
Okay.
Which kind of says to me that maybe Ryan Presley maybe did a little bit of pouting, but not too severe to where we would necessarily have heard about it. So maybe if you looked at the fact that he kind of probably by his standards had a down year, could you blame that on him being, maybe disenchanted, we could say?
I think minimally, but I think the majority of his downness is like his fastball lost velocity, right? Like
Yeah,
when you have to be able to hit 95 and then he throws that fucking big old banger of a curveball with that much spin on it, like it's hard to adjust, right? But like if I can look for that curveball and adjust to a 92 or 93 mile an hour fastball, you're a little bit easier to hit. And just that little bit at the major league level makes a huge difference. So I think the difference between 95 and 93 hurt Presley a lot more than being a little bit butthurt over not being the closer anymore. Because I think realistically, the signs were there in 2023 that Ryan Presley should not be your closer going forward into 2024. And, I think Graveman, kind of forced the Astros' hand a little bit with his injury. But before that, you and I expressed concern, right? Like
yeah.
before that season, the idea of Montero and Graveman and Presley and Abreu, like we all just assumed Abreu was going to take over Presley's job going into 2024. We never even thought Presley would make it through the year as the closer. So I chalk it up more to like, yeah, maybe he went in there like I don't know if you see the movie Draft Day, but maybe he went in there like Bryce Drew style or Brian Drew style, and he like trashed his desk and he said like I was the best fucking closer this team ever saw, and you just gave my spot away. You're gonna fucking live to regret it, like maybe that's what happened. And then like he's like, you're gonna be the best setup man we ever saw. How about that? Maybe they got like back and forth each other's face. I don't know. But like again, I just think more than anything, it was the drop in velo that hurt Ryan Presley.
I think if you looked at him, though, I think there might be some credence to it just based on the fact that he got off to such a horrible start. And then as the year went on, I think as he adjusted to the role, he started, he had that stretch where he had like 10 or 15 games in a row that went scoreless, that he was, starting
Yeah,
to
then he got
hum.
hurt.
Yeah, But I tend to agree with you in terms of the trajectory of his career. I think, the Cubs are kind of making me laugh. It looks like they're looking at adding David Robertson, and it's like, so, can we add as many 30 somethings? You remember that show 30 something? Did you ever hear?
No, I don't
Called
remember that one.
But there was a show called 30 something, and I think maybe that's where the Chicago Cubs bullpen is going to be, 30 something.
We'll see. I mean, it would be rough if they added him and then made him a closer after he just traded Presley, and he just waived his no trade clause so he could go be your closer.
Well, the thing is that people are now, I'm worried about the Astros bullpen depth.
I'm less worried about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We came into that last year, and we're going like, who in the hell is, Scott? Who in the hell is Brian King? Who in the hell is Caleb Ort? And all of a sudden, these guys were humming it.
Yeah.
And so I have more faith that we can find fungible bullpen arms that can work than I am in any other portion of this team. Yeah. Even say starting rotation. I'm more worried about our starting rotation than I am the bullpen.
I agree with you, Scott. Like, I think losing Presley, this team might, I hate to say it, but maybe got a little bit better because you're no longer kind of pigeonholed into using Ryan Presley in the eighth inning, right? Like now that Brady goes back to the eighth inning where he was at his best, you could slide Caleb Ort into the seventh. Tanner Scott becomes your fireman and gets you out of the bad jams. And then you've still got a guy like Forrest Whitley who showed he can actually be a pretty decent reliever. And maybe that's a guy who can look late innings in some games. I believe LMJ is coming back as a reliever is everything that I've heard. So that's another guy who will help solidify that bullpen, theoretically.
Here's another, a couple of names for you. One, do you have a trash can handy?
I do not.
I was going to make sure if you get sick that you got something, to one of them, rosterresource.com, which is affiliated with Fangraphs, has roster resource.
Oh, okay.
They have Rafael Montero making the team as a non-roster invitee.
I mean,
but
I read that we were trying to trade him. And it was just like, who the fuck is going to trade for Rafael Montero?
Well, but you've already cut him from his contract, so he's not really under contract.
And he's not even on the 40-man roster anymore, is he?
No, he'd have to be a non-roster.
Why are we trying to trade him?
So, but here's you mentioned a name. Would you be interested in like throwing a league minimum at Kendall Graveman?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like, he was good for us. I just feel like he was always better everywhere else, right? Like every time we brought Kendall Graveman here, he kind of took a step back. And so I don't know. I'd be interested in having the conversation, but as you said, it's got to be league minimum, something like that. I'm not spending big bucks on the guy.
I don't think he has any other offers out there. I mean, I've never heard anybody.
But I mean, you look at what he was doing in Seattle, and then he got to Houston. He was good, not great, right? Then he goes and he signs with the White Sox. He's fucking on fire again. Gets back to Houston. He's like leaking oil the whole time he's here. He's good, but he was never the same that he was before he got here. It seems like he didn't enjoy being here.
The difference is that he wouldn't be making $8 or $9 million, and he wouldn't be your seventh or eighth inning guy. He would just be another guy in the pen.
It'd be an intriguing thought, Scott, if he's healthy, right? Like, we'd obviously it's weird that if he was healthy enough that he hasn't gotten those offers, right? Or at least a minor league contract with an invite to spring training.
I haven't looked at his injury recovery, so I don't know if he is on schedule. We did see, you mentioned LMJ. We did see that Dana Brown has basically said that LMJ and Luis Garcia are not going to start the season on the team. He said that maybe they make it back in April. Seems like we've heard this song and dance.
I can't believe how, like, what at this point, he has to have a bionic fucking elbow, Scott. Like, I want at some point for Lance McCullers to be able to be like, go gadget, like Windex, and be able to like spray shit off with this elbow.
Go gadget curveball.
Like, yeah, go gadget fastball. Because like, how the fuck does it take 2 years? Like more than 2 years. This is mind blowing. Like, and I just assumed he'd be ready to go because he was out all last year, right? Like, he took the whole year. JV did it. We've seen it. Okay, you take the whole year, you come back strong. I've seen video of him throwing. Okay, and then it's like he's not gonna be ready to go. It's just like, are you kidding me?
Well, I want to call up a guy I was telling you about on the text line. I got to try out this voice. There are people in Kansas City that said that they've made, hay off of Patrick Mahomes' voice, trying to see like if they can, what they can play in the background to make it sound sexy. So there's this guy that comes on 610 every once in a while. His name is Nick Costos. And the only way I can describe him is he is the king of the Lollipop Guild. This is Nick Costos. Come bet with us. You're paying me $500. I'm Nick Costos. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, you gotta. I just don't know. It was crazy. I had to share that, because it was just the worst voice for radio I've ever heard before in my life.
I gotta tell you, the worst voice I ever heard. When I got out of college, I worked as a manager at a place called Grimaldi's Pizzeria, right?
Oh, yeah.
I had like a 20-30 minute drive from where I lived to where I worked, just because like I lived right next to Texans Stadium, and I thought it was so fucking cool that my place was right next to the Texans. Like I didn't care that I had a little bit of a drive. So most times when I got out, I was privy to Scott Farrell on the bench. And I don't know, Scott, have you ever listened to Scott Farrell?
I can't say I have.
Scott Farrell on the bench here. Welcome in. And what do you got over there for me, Scotty?
God.
This guy's national syndicated radio. And Scott, that's what he sounded like. Like you should Google Scott Farrell on the bench and see what he sounded like. But people call in, they'd be like, pour me a shot, Scott. I'm feeling it tonight. And then he'd like play like this sound effect of like someone pouring a shot, or like someone else would call in and be like, I'm feeling a beer. And then you'd have like the sound effect of like someone filling up a beer on drafts and stuff like that. But yeah, man, Scott Farrell was hands down the worst radio voice I ever heard.
All right. Are we ready for some awards, Tim?
Yeah, let's start giving away. Scott, who do you have for us this week as our Horse's Ass of the Week?
Okay, Horse's Ass is going to be a frequent recent winner. Do you have any laugh tracks available, Tim?
I didn't load up the laugh track, Scott.
The Dallas Cowboys have hired Ryan Schottenheimer as their head coach.
I think the All Natural is just even better than the track.
And all I got to say is, Shotty, I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at
Jerry, right? Like we're laughing at Jerry.
We're laughing at Jerry because here's the thing, right? So, do you know what his job was, Tim?
Brian?
Yes.
Wipe Dak Prescott's ass.
He was the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys.
No, I knew that. I thought you meant like what was his roles within that, because he didn't call plays because Mike didn't call the plays. So I think he just wiped Dak Prescott's ass.
So, do you really want anybody that was a part of this shit show to be your head coach?
They wanted McCarthy back. They wanted to bring McCarthy back, and they blew it.
So, to me, Kellen Moore was still available. Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator on the best team in the NFC. So,
but they didn't like how Kellen Moore ran plays. They fired Kellen Moore and hyped Brian Schottenheimer.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying like you could, if you're selling this to the Dallas Cowboys fans, how do you even sell this? Now, because I was thinking about this, and I decided that.
Hang on, real quick. Do you want to know how he tried to sell it? Because I kid you not, the quote from Jerry Jones was when the media asked about it. Well, there's not a lot of smiles and glory holes about the decision.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and
like glory holes.
Well, here's where to me there is one move that was worse. David fucking Culley, because I've heard of Brian Schottenheimer. I know who Brian Schottenheimer is. He's been a coordinator for 11 years in the NFL.
See, I disagree. I think the Jags
I've
are higher.
I've heard of that, but when we hired David Culley, I was like, who the fuck is David Culley?
Oh, he's been a good offensive coordinator for Kentucky and for the Bucs. Like I think that was a good hire.
Well,
I think
no,
the
Culley,
dick move to
Culley had never been an offensive coordinator. Never.
Culley, David Culley. I thought you were talking
Yeah.
about Cohen,
No.
Cohen, the guy who got hired by the Jags.
Oh, no. Culley was the worst
that one
hire.
was terrible. I still
Now,
to this
to
day
me,
don't understand.
I put Brian Schottenheimer on the level of Lovie Smith. Because, when you hire Lovie Smith, you're just like, at least I've heard of him. His
I only
defense
heard of Brian Schottenheimer because of his dad.
Yeah, but he's been an offensive coordinator in the league. He's been around.
For his dad.
Yeah, but he's who he is? He's the baseball version of Lou Brown. He's been a manager of the Toledo Mud Hens for the last 34 years, and I think he fits perfectly in with our team concept.
Do you think when he got the call, like they say, hey, you're going to be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Is that you, Tolbert?
No, he's like, hey, can I put you on hold? I got the guy on the other end about some white walls.
Exactly.
Let me get back to you.
I don't know. We got a big sale going on this week. I'm expecting to move a lot of rubber.
We're at Discount Tire, man. I got a guy on the other end about some white walls. Oh, man.
Oh my God.
All right. Who do you got? Who do you got, Tim?
I wanted to add into, like, how does any free agent take the Cowboys seriously at this point, right? Like, if you're unwilling to even do a full-on fucking coaching search, like, why would I want to come to town? Jerry just wanted what was comfortable. Like, he didn't want – like, I don't think Dion was the guy, right? Like, I think Dion's shtick works better in college. I think he's better at molding 18-year-olds into draft prospects. Like, some guys are a fit for that. Nick Saban was a fit for that. But it doesn't mean that was Dion it wasn't Dion or Brian Schottenheimer, right? Like, there was plenty of other talent. Like, you could have had Brian Johnson. You could have had whoever. But, like, I think it says so much that Mike McCarthy, and I don't think he's a good coach, would rather be unemployed right now than work for Jerry Jones for any more length.
It looks like he will be.
That's where it was.
And he looks like he's falling out of favor with the Saints, so it looks like he's going to walk away without an NFL job.
And I guarantee you he's fine with that. Like, if you went to him and said, Mike, are you okay with the fact that you're not the Cowboys coach and you're sitting out for a year? Maybe this was it. He'd say, yeah, I don't want to work for Jerry fucking Jones anymore.
I mean, unless he was buying cheesesteaks with every meal at the most expensive restaurant in town, he's got to have saved up some money. I mean, he's been a head coach in the league for about almost 15 years?
Yeah, and I don't think it's about money for these guys. It's about the fact that there's only these jobs available, right? So
I'm just saying, like, he can sit out. I mean, it's not going to hurt him any. He's probably got enough money in the bank.
If you're a good coach, like, how much are you really going out to eat and having nice meals, right? Because you're supposed to be – all these guys are supposed to be at the facility grinding all the time, right? They're there from 5 a.m. till 9 o'clock at night.
It is Mike McCarthy, too.
That too. But, like, I'm just saying, right? Like, if you really are one of those coaches who's grinding, you're eating breakfast at the team facility, you're eating lunch at the team facility, you're eating dinner at the team facility. Like, maybe your wife likes to spend some money, like, okay, but, like, realistically, you personally, you shouldn't have time to be spending money if you're a good NFL head coach.
But then it's Mike McCarthy.
Just he's a guy. You know what? I work 9 to 5. I work. Mike McCarthy is the definition of, like, today's version of working your wage. Like, you pay me this much, you get this much out of me, right? Like, if you're willing to pay me more, you can have 9 to 7. If you pay me even more, I'll go 7 to 7. But at the rate that we're at now, you get me from 9 to 5. All
right, Tim. Who do you got? Who is your horse's ass?
I'm not sure who exactly is to blame here, right? But I am going to preface this as, the Texans hired a new team president this week. And the rumor mill coming out is the reason they hired who they hired is because they're going to be angling for a new stadium. And the reason for that is because the NFL has determined NRG is just too old to host Super Bowls, right? And I'm lost, right? NRG is a great facility. It's fine. Does it need some updating? Sure, absolutely. But is there a reason to tear down a perfectly good facility that has the adjustable roof, that's in a warm weather climate, that has the nightlife, that has the hotels, that has everything you need in place to host a Super Bowl? Why do we need a new stadium, Scott? Like, we live in a society of waste as it is. We don't need to be fucking wasting professional sporting venues. We don't need to just, well, it's been 20 years. No, stadiums are built to last. If your house can last 20 years, a fucking billion-dollar football facility can last more than that too, right? Like, it's absolutely insane to me that we're even thinking about this. So I don't know if it's the NFL for saying that our stadium's too old to host a Super Bowl. I don't know if it's the Texans for thinking like, nah, we just need a new stadium. Like, we should go up near the Woodlands. It'll be so nice up there. Like, no, like, you're in a fine situation. You've got plenty of parking. You've got, again, nightlife, hotels, everything you need. I don't understand it. There's nowhere to grow within the city of Houston. You're not building a new football stadium anywhere around there. So tell me where you're going to go that's not somewhere around the fucking outskirts of town in the middle of nowhere. And now you're going to have to build a whole new cityscape. Now you're going to have to build hotels. You're going to have to build restaurants. You're going to have to build a plaza. You're going to have to build all this other shit. And it's just greed and waste when we have exactly what we need already.
This is what I don't understand. The news that came down with the Daikin deal at what was formerly Minute Maid Park, and I don't know if you heard this part, but Jim Crane is sinking $100 million into park improvements. $100 million.
Just you have a stadium, make it nicer.
Yeah, well, and $100 million. That stadium was built for like $300 million. So I mean, that's pretty significant facelift.
And it's not the first time, Scott, that they've made park improvements. They made them right before the 2017 season too.
Did you watch the John Oliver special on stadium deals?
I think so, but I watch a lot of John Oliver specials. So
one of them was like, I think in Cincinnati made a deal where if a stadium came out with a hologram, that they would have to add a hologram to their stadium. It was written in the contract. So whatever future technology comes out in some other stadium has to be added to the Cincinnati stadium. I mean, this is what
I'd rather that than building a new one, right?
Well,
like,
this is what
that makes sense.
Well, this is what this sounds like. It's like, well, you know what SoFi Stadium has? SoFi Stadium has this. We're not going to give you the Super Bowl unless you put in what SoFi has. And so this is the NFL strongman sitting there basically, we're not going to throw you a nugget. And this is, we're talking about millions of dollars when your city gets the Super Bowl.
Billions, I mean, that's realistically in the economic, 5 years of getting up to it and everything like that.
Yeah. So, the NFL's got these cities over a barrel. And, in order, he's going to say, well, it's a nice little Astrodome you got there, but maybe you got to tear that sucker down. Or maybe we put in like, a huge screen all around the dome, and we could put in like, have 100,000 people pay tickets and 30,000 of them can sit in the Astrodome and watch the game on TV.
If that's what you want to do, I'm fine with that. Like, that's better, right? But
I'm just saying, but the NFL is just creating this whole, well, this other city's got this in their park.
And Scott, what's the best thing about doing a stadium, not a tour, but like when you go to Major League Baseball stadiums, they all have a little bit of different character, right? And like, there's older ones that have been there a while, and they're all different, and they all have their own charm, and they all represent the city in a certain way. The NFL is like, they want cookie cutter shit. They want, this is the template for a Super Bowl stadium. Please have screens that are this big. Please have seating here. Please have boxes that are around these areas, right? Like, there's just no character, and that's part of the problem with the Super Bowl having predetermined cities. Like you said, they have these teams at their beck and call. And you hold them by the nuts and say, do this or else you're not going to get one. And as much money as Jerry spends, they haven't gotten one since they had that ice storm when they had one here in the city of Arlington, couldn't fucking handle it. So sometimes it doesn't even matter how nice your stadium is. The city that it's in, doesn't have the infrastructure. Sorry. Even though they built, if you haven't been to Arlington and they have the ballpark, they have the rugby stadium, and then attached to a hotel, attached to Arlington Live, like they've got like what you need to have people there. But there was an ice storm one time. Sorry. Like, I don't even want it here, but it's still ridiculous that like Jerry Jones can't even get a fucking Super Bowl in his stadium again, right? Like, it's dumb, because if the Super Bowl was played like in the home team stadium, none of this would matter. None of it would matter, because you just go to wherever that is and that's their stadium and they're hosting, right? Like Major League Baseball, even though they make the Astros close the roof or open the roof because it's too loud, they can't come in and be like, you're not allowed to play in the World Series as long as the Crawford boxers are still there, right? They can't do that. It's our fucking stadium.
Yeah.
But the NFL can, and that's the problem. So really, I guess it's really the NFL is the horse's ass here.
Yep.
All right, Scott, enough of the negativity for a moment. Let's tip a cap here. Who do you have for us this week?
I got 2 hat tips quick for this week. Number one, we mentioned him earlier, but I wanted to spend a little bit more time on him. Amen Thompson is my hat tip. Yesterday in Boston, by the way, for those of y'all who are following along, the Rockets did defeat the Hawks 100-96 this evening to continue their win streak. And this has been quite the murderer's row. Now, the Hawks, obviously not. That was a makeup game from the snow that occurred, a couple of weeks ago. But defeating Cleveland twice, so they swept the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. They just beat the Boston Celtics in Boston, the number 2 team in the Eastern Conference. And Amen Thompson in that game, 33 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists, including a teardrop there with 0.7 seconds left to score the winning bucket. Tim mentioned it before that he entered the starting lineup with Jabari Smith, went down with his broken hand, somehow breaking it during shoot around. I still would love to know how that happened, but be that as it may. And this team has taken a significant step. And I didn't think that they would take a step with him in the starting lineup. I thought that, they would maybe hold serve. Maybe they would take a step back, because as good as he is, he can defend 3-4 different positions on the court. I didn't think he'd be able to bang, and he probably still doesn't bang like a traditional 4 would, but he can defend the 1, 2, or 3 about as well as any guy in the league right now. And I don't know if you have his numbers handy, Tim, but, in the starting lineup, he's probably averaging, 15, 16 a game?
Yeah. He's nearly good for a double-double with rebounds and assists. He had a triple-double the other night, game winner. It's fantastic. It's very often, it's very rare that you get to watch kind of a guy blossom before your eyes, right? But as Rockets fans right now, we're kind of watching Amen blossom into a star player. It's exciting, and he definitely deserves the hat tip for taking the opportunity, because there's plenty of guys who injuries happen and you get inserted into the lineup and you don't take full advantage of it, right? But then there's the Lou Gehrig's of the world. There's the Colin Kaepernicks of the world, right? Where you got your opportunity and you took it. The Patrick Mahomes, right? Like Alex Smith was there before Mahomes. Mahomes became the starter and never looked back. So whenever you get your opportunity and you take advantage of it, and not only take advantage of it, but flourish, it's exciting to see.
All right, you want to sandwich this thing?
No, you go ahead and take your
Go ahead. All right, so second one real quick. My daughter is going through her auditions now. I forgot to ask them for NIL money. That's kind of my bad. That's kind of my bet on that. I was kind of maybe angling, seeing if we can get her a Jardiance ad, I can pay for. But no, I had to do a hat tip. TCU ran a first-rate audition process. We were in and out. Her audition was at about 10:30. We were out of there by 11. And so, and they held a meeting beforehand, questions and answers. They held it in their concert hall, which is the Van Cliburn Concert Hall. It was built in 2020, state of the art after Van Cliburn passed away. Left them the money to build that concert hall. A beautiful structure, great sound acoustics, just fantastic, first rate all the way. And so, and I watched her. We did not go up and introduce ourselves to anybody. We let her do that, but they went, and when she introduced herself, they remembered her, and they made her feel comfortable, and they were like, hey, you're going to do great, break a leg, it's going to be fantastic. I mean, they could have pulled who the fuck are you again? I don't know. But they at least they put up a good game and pretended like they knew who she was. So good on them.
Could you imagine, like, once you got accepted into college, you then had to like do a bunch of math on a whiteboard in front of a room of people to like audition to be able to take like the math class that you wanted? Like, it's like, obviously at this level, right? Auditions make sense, everything, but it's just crazy that like she's
Yeah.
accepted to the school and then she still has to audition again.
Oh,
Like,
she hasn't been accepted yet because
okay,
they're holding
gotcha,
acceptance based on now LSU and Sam Houston have accepted her, and she's still going to audition there. That makes her a little bit less nervous because she knows he's in already.
gotcha. That makes a little bit more sense, but still, yeah, crazy, Scott. But yeah, I'm glad it went well. I'm glad she crushed it, and I wouldn't be opposed to you having to make a few more road trips up to the Metroplex. At some point, we'll be able to hook up while you're up here.
That's right.
All right, Scott. I'm back and forth on where we're going to go with this one. I think D'Amico certainly deserves a hat tip for pulling the trigger and for firing Bobby Slowik. However, hearing more that what's coming out, and after watching that video specifically, I'm maybe a little bit less happy that he did it, and more curious why it didn't happen earlier. However, ding dong, the witch is dead. Bobby Slowik is out of the building. I'm going to tip my cap to D'Amico Ryans for making that happen. And then on second note, I'm going to tip my cap to Roy McIlroy, right? Like, I think he's one of the more insightful guys out there. And he's willing to give you a good quote when you ask the right questions. I asked him this week about pace of play, and I think it obviously comes up because the TGL that he plays in has a shot clock. And so you get 15 seconds once it's your turn and go from there. You can't quite do it the same way in golf simply because, there's delays. As he said, almost every pro out there is hitting par fives and 2. You've got 240-yard par 3s. You're playing Torrey Pines last week and the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour and the greens are rolling at a 13, 14 mile on the stem. And there's $5 million on the line. And the course is packed, right? So, like, even if you cut it by 15 minutes, you're playing 5-hour and 15-minute rounds instead of 5-hour and a half rounds. So it's, he gave some really insightful answers. And I appreciate that, right? Like, because what's interesting to me, Scott, the most interesting thing he said was like, golf's kind of always been a leisurely game that takes a minute. It's only lately that we had a problem with it, right? And it kind of makes sense. And you and I are both baseball guys. Baseball is always a game that was leisurely. It took what it took. It played 9 innings. There was no time limit. When the game was done, it was done. It was the last 10 years that we had to start messing with the pace of play, right? And we as a society are the ones that can't slow down and enjoy things anymore. And we've got to speed everything up. And I think Roy made a great point that stop and slow down, sit down, enjoy what it is. If you want something faster, the TGL is there for that. But at the end of the day, the pace of play is what it is based on the way we set it up, right? Don't play like that on a regular golf course. Fuck you 18 handicaps. I think you're going to hit your 3-wood 250. It's not happening. You're not me. You're not Roy. We're not on the same level, but I can do it. But on the PGA Tour, pace of play kind of is what it is right now, and here's why. And it was a really insightful answer.
Yeah, I'm on pace of play. I'm pretty much, if you're going to suck fast. That's been on my, but yeah, I think the ones that piss me off the most are the ones who are like, I'm 270 out, I just hit my drive 130 yards. Better wait for the green to clear. It's like, come on, dude. And then the ones who are like stupidly, I'm going to leave my cart 50 yards behind the hole. Oh, I got to run back and get my cart. And you're just like, but, in general,
but that's the difference between public golf pace of play
in professional tour, right? Because that's not happening out there.
Yeah,
What's
yeah,
happening
yeah.
on the tour is either you've got a guy like Brian fucking Harmon who takes 37 practice swings and waggles before he finally hits the ball, or you've got every single pro out there who's going to hit the green in 2 on a par 5 that has to wait for it to clear, or you've got guys that are standing over 15-foot putts for too long, right? Like that's what people see on TV, and they maybe don't understand the context behind it.
Would you pull a Judge Smells where you said that $50 you slice it in the woods? Gambling is illegal in the PGA and Tour, sir, and I never slice.
Yeah, it was on TV this weekend. I literally watched Caddyshack this weekend. You're over on Briar Street, right? You got a pool? We got a pool and a pond. Pond might be better for you though.
But for nice, natural spring. All right, Tim. Is it that time?
It is, Scott. These people have offended us, and they need to be recognized as scumbags of the week. Who do you got for us this week?
Okay, so one more time. I do a little thing with the kids at school where I ask them a question of the day. I had my internship today, so I missed them today. But yesterday, my question was Eagles, Chiefs, or Meteor? Would you like to know what the winning answer response was, Tim?
What was the third option? Meteor? Oh, Meteor probably won.
It was overwhelmingly. And here's my thing. My scumbag is the NFL yet again, because we have a couple of calls, obviously that the Chiefs got that we'll just say questionable.
I mean, Josh Allen got that first down on the quarterback sneak, shown by video evidence. Then we're told he didn't get it.
And Xavier Worthy, that ball touched the ground. So,
and Josh Allen's literally in the pocket pointing out a pass interference while he's that one was great.
Yeah. So here's my thing. 2 things the NFL can do, right? Number one, and you had Mike Farrar, that was on the guy that's on Fox, that's the NFL rules official, that's on, that they go to and ask questions. He just says, you just hire an extra official, you put him up in the booth, and he does a review of all calls. It's that simple. Hey, Bob, that was not a roughing the passer call. Will Anderson, he did not leave with the helmet. Pick that flag up. It's that simple. Actually, the 2 linebackers, they hit themselves. They did not hit Patrick Mahomes. Go ahead and pick that flag up. It's that easy. That was a first down for Josh Allen. Let's keep this thing going. It's that simple. And, for the NFL, how much money do you think they're making a total a year?
On what?
Just the NFL, just period.
Ugh. Billions. I mean, I don't know. A couple
billion
a year.
We have a maximum of 16 games a week. What would it cost to you to hire one extra official to be an eye in the sky?
Probably like 1.6 million. I think would be the max if you pay them all if refs make like $100,000 a year.
And so, number 2, why aren't NFL officials full-time employees? Please
they
answer
are
that.
Now, I thought.
I didn't think they were.
I thought after that last strike, that was one of the things. No, they hired a certain percentage of them. They hired like a certain 10% have to be like full-time employees.
Why not 100%, Tim? I mean, it's, if you want to get the call.
Because your referee needs to be at his law firm Monday through Friday and then getting ready to go call a game on Sunday, because that totally makes sense.
You can't be watching tape.
You should be partner in a law firm and Ed Hockley on
like
Sunday.
One guy is like a varsity basketball coach in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you, I mean, here's the thing, right? It's a hard job. I have no doubt in my mind. And I have no doubt in my mind that they're trying to make the right call. I don't think that they're trying to, to make the Chiefs. I don't think there's a conspiracy theory. I just think they're not good. And the thing is that you could have a eye in the sky that could correct calls right there in the moment, because full well when they did this where you could review pass interference calls, they never overturned any of those. So if they're going to sit there and allow like their plan is we're going to allow roughing the passer or leading with the helmet to be reviewable. They're not going to reverse any of those calls. So let the eye in the sky do it real quick before the guy even goes to the microphone. Bob, don't do this. You're wrong. You're wrong, Bob. Don't make this call. It's that easy. And have them be full-time employees where you could watch tape and you could watch where you fucked up and maybe do better next time.
You know what else is really easy, Scott? Microchip technology. I don't watch a lot of tennis. I don't. But like you can challenge where the ball landed in tennis and they go to the screen and they got the fucking white lines right there and it comes in and it shows you exactly where that fucking ball hit. And you're like, oh hey, it was in or it was out. Or soccer. They have a chip in the ball and there's a on the goal line, right? Like, or the whatever the line is, right? And it tells you, did it get passed? Did it not get passed? Hey, now we know. Why are we not capable of, in those fucking first down sticks and in the ball, have a chip that reads, it got past this. It got past this stick. Okay, cool. It I don't care what the fucking ref spot is. The chip is telling me first down, right? Like that is technology that already exists and we just don't do it, right? Why? I don't know. I don't know. They got it. They fucking got it. We don't need to do it. The fucking spotting is excellent. Like, no, there's a reason broadcasters talk about like a left-footed spot or things like that because these guys aren't good at what they do. It's impossible to be good at what you do when you do it one day a week, right? Like, if this is not how you pay for your life, it's a hobby. Okay, I get that it's a big-time hobby and you get paid for your hobby, but it's still a hobby or a side gig or a side hustle or whatever you want to call it. It's not your full-time job and you can't devote yourself to being good at it. Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous, man.
Yeah, so, all right, who do you got, Tim?
I think we were both in line with the NFL on that one, Scott. You're maybe taking my wind out of my sails a little bit there, but, also just to hear the reports, as you said, of Ryan Presley, I'm maybe going to add him in there a little bit. I love what he did. I think he was great, but to show up and I think to not accept just being a part of the roster and can't look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I did kind of let the team down a lot in 2023. That's disappointing to hear. So a half-hearted scumbag to Ryan Presley.
Yeah, I'm going to do an overall hat tip to his, 6 years in Houston?
Best playoff reliever we've ever had.
Yeah, 7 years in Houston, 2018 to 2024. That's 7 years. Yeah, I mean,
you don't win the 2022 World Series without Ryan Presley.
Yeah, I understand disappointment, but to me, my scumbag in this situation actually is Dana Brown. Why are you even bringing that up? You dealt him. Let bygones be bygones. Don't air dirty laundry. It's like it would be one thing if you were to sit there and make a comment like, well, we could have traded him to this team, or this team, and the fucker turned it down. I mean, if you want to go that route and you want to sit there and say you want to complain about what we got back, but, my hands were tied and that he wouldn't accept a deal to these places. But that's not where he went with that. Where he went with that was just, well, our relationship wasn't very good after I hired his replacement. Well, yeah.
Yeah, whose would be?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're right. I think I agree with you, Scott. I don't think it should be even at Ryan. I think there does need to be a hat tip for his time in Houston. Probably when his career is done, he gets his number or in the Houston Hall of Fame, I would have to think, right? You're a part of
I hope so, yeah.
The best run of Astros baseball we ever had, and you were the closer for a good chunk of it, and you closed out a World Series game at home.
So, I mean, excluding Billy Wagner, who, is now in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Finally.
Who is the second best closer in Astros history?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you could say, based on the World Series win, the most successful closer in Astros history, right? If you deem winning a championship and postseason success as the ultimate, then Ryan Presley was the most successful closer that we ever had.
And probably the best outing that I think he ever came up with actually was in 2023's ALCS, where Abreu gets tossed, for throwing at Dallas Garcia, supposedly, and they bring him in and he cleans that shit up. Even there were like, what was there, 2 men on base? It
Yeah.
was a bases loaded. That was probably his best pitching performance in the postseason.
He had some good ones, man. The no-hitter, he closed out the no-hitter in the postseason, closed out a no-hitter in Yankee Stadium. Guy's got some great moments. Got some great moments in Astros uniform. Glad to have had him. And, I truly do wish nothing but the best to Ryan Presley. I shouldn't have even brought it up, Scott. I really shouldn't, because I really don't have anything negative to say about Ryan Presley.
All right.
All right, that's going to do it here for this week. We appreciate everybody who tuned in and made us a part of your week. If you like what we're doing, be sure to follow us on Facebook, like the page if you want to on Facebook, or even subscribe to us on YouTube. We'd really love to boost those YouTube numbers. But we appreciate everybody who joined us this week. We will see you next week on Born on the Bayou Sports.